The sun had just started to rise over the small town, painting the dusty streets with soft golden light. In one of the narrow lanes, a young girl stood alone with a bat in her hands. The handle was worn, and the tape around it had peeled off long ago, but she held it like it was something precious. Her name was Mira. She was only 16, but there was a kind of quiet determination in her eyes that didn't match her age. Every morning, before the town fully woke up, Mira came to the same spot near the broken wall at the edge of the playground. The air smelled of damp earth and old grass. She would toss a ball against the wall and hit it back again and again. The sound of the ball striking echoed across the empty field like a heartbeat. It was her secret practice. Nobody knew she came here. Nobody would have understood anyway. In her school, people knew her as the quiet girl who loved to draw and take notes during class. She never joined in the noisy conversations or the games during break time. The boys at school played cricket every afternoon, shouting and laughing as they hit the ball across the ground. Mira would sometimes stand near the boundary, pretending she was just watching. In truth, she watched their every move closely, memorizing how they held the bat, how they timed the ball, how they moved their feet. Once she had asked if she could join. The boys looked at her, and one of them laughed so loudly that the others joined in. "You? Play cricket? You can't even lift the bat properly," one of them said. Even the teacher, who stood nearby, smiled and said kindly, "Mira, maybe you should focus on something else. Cricket is tough, especially for girls." Those words stayed with her not because they hurt, but because they fueled her. Every time someone said she couldn't do it, she felt something stronger inside her, a fire that told her she would prove them wrong. Her father understood that fire. He used to be a local cricket player when he was younger, but an accident ended his chance to play professionally. Still, he never let go of his love for the game. In the evenings, after his long shift at the factory, he would come home tired but always made time for Mira. They would go to the backyard, and he would show her how to hold the bat properly, how to read the bowler's hand, how to keep her eyes on the ball. Her mother didn't like it much. She would say, "You're making her dream about something that can't happen. People will laugh at her." But her father only smiled and said, "Let them laugh now. One day she'll make them clap." Those words became Mira's strength. She practiced harder each day. When her friends were out playing games or scrolling through their phones, Mira was on the ground perfecting her shots. She didn't have fancy equipment or a coach. Her bat was old, her shoes had holes, and her clothes were worn out. But none of that mattered to her. All she needed was her dream and her father's belief. Sometimes kids from the neighborhood passed by and laughed when they saw her practicing alone. They would say, "No one will ever pick you for a match. Why waste your time?" Mira never replied. She just smiled and went back to hitting the ball. Deep inside, she knew that if she kept practicing one day, she would get her chance. The only person who truly believed in her, apart from her father, was an old watchman who looked after the ground. He had seen hundreds of players come and go, but none like her. One evening he said to her, "You remind me of a boy I once saw long ago." Everyone laughed at him too, but he became the best player this town ever had. "Don't stop, child. People only laugh until you make them notice you." His words stayed with her like a blessing. Days turned into months. Mira's body grew stronger. Her shots became sharper, her timing more accurate. Even when it rained, she practiced inside, using a small rubber ball and bouncing it off the wall. Her mother sometimes complained that she was ruining the house paint, but her father defended her every time. "At least she's not wasting her time," he would say with pride. One morning, Mira overheard some boys talking near the school gate. They were excited about an upcoming local cricket tournament. It was a big deal in the town. Teams from nearby schools would compete, and people came from all around to watch. The winning team often got selected to play at the district level. Mira's heart started racing. She wanted to be part of it more than anything. That evening, she went to her school coach and asked if she could join the practice sessions. The coach looked surprised. "Mira, this isn't a mixed team. It's a boys' tournament," he said. She nodded politely and replied, "I just want a chance to show what I can do. You don't even have to select me if I'm not good enough. Just let me practice once." The coach hesitated. After a long pause, he said, "Fine, come tomorrow, but don't expect anyone to take it easy on you." That night, Mira could hardly sleep. She kept thinking about the next day. Her hands trembled slightly as she imagined standing on the field with the others. When morning came, she got ready early, wearing her old uniform and carrying her father's bat. As she walked toward the ground, she could already hear the boys shouting and laughing. The moment she stepped onto the field, everything went quiet. Dozens of eyes turned toward her. Someone whispered, "Is she serious?" Another boy smirked and said, "Maybe she just wants to watch." The coach cleared his throat and said, "She'll practice with us today." The boys exchanged glances, but didn't say anything. Mira took her place quietly. When the first ball was thrown at her, she swung and missed completely. A few boys snickered. On the second ball, she missed again. Someone laughed loudly. Her face turned red, but she didn't give up. She took a deep breath, remembered her father's words, and focused on the next ball. When it came, she moved her feet just right and hit it cleanly. The ball flew across the field and landed near the boundary. The sound of the bat echoed loudly. The laughter stopped. The coach raised his eyebrows in surprise. The next few balls went the same way in strong, clean shots. By the time she finished her turn, the field had gone silent. The same boys who mocked her were now watching her in disbelief. Mira walked off the field quietly, her heart pounding. The coach nodded slightly, a faint smile on his face. "Good shot," he said. It was just 2 words, but they meant the world to her. That night, when she told her father what had happened, he didn't say anything for a long moment. Then he smiled and patted her shoulder. "I told you," he said softly. "They'll laugh until they see you play." As she lay in bed that night staring at the ceiling, Mira felt something she had never felt before. Not just hope, but confidence. She knew she still had a long way to go, but for the first time the path ahead didn't seem impossible. The sound of that single shot, the one that silenced everyone, kept playing in her mind like a song, and somewhere deep inside, she promised herself that this was just the beginning. One day they wouldn't just let her play, they would ask her to lead. The morning sun burned bright over the small playground where Mira stood with her bat in hand. The memory of that first clean shot from the day before still played in her mind. For the first time, she had felt what it was like to be seen not as a joke but as a player, yet deep down she knew that one good practice wasn't enough. The road ahead was still full of people waiting for her to fail. The next few days were tough. The boys still didn't talk to her much. Some ignored her completely, while others whispered when she missed a shot. The coach, however, began watching her more closely. He didn't show it openly, but something in his expression had changed. Mira noticed it. Every time she hit the ball cleanly, he nodded slightly. It was small, but it meant everything to her. One afternoon after practice, the coach called everyone together. "We've got an exhibition match this weekend," he said. "We'll be playing against the neighboring town's junior team. It's not official, but it's good experience," the boys cheered. Then one of them asked, "Sir, who's in the team?" The coach read out the names one by one. Mira's name wasn't there. She tried to stay calm, pretending not to care, but her heart sank. When everyone left, she stayed behind, picking up stray balls from the field. The coach noticed her and walked over. "You played well this week," he said. "But this match is already planned. Maybe next time." Mira nodded and forced a small smile. She didn't argue. She just said, "I understand, sir." But when she reached home that evening, she went straight to the backyard and practiced until it got dark. Her father watched from the porch, silent at first. After a while, he said, "You're hitting better than last month. Keep going. They can't ignore you forever." She smiled weakly. "But what if they do?" she asked. Her father looked at her and said, "Then you'll just have to play so well that even they can't deny you." Those words stuck in her heart. Saturday came quickly, the day of the match. The playground was packed with people from both towns. Mira came early just to watch. She sat on the sidelines holding her bat. Even though she wasn't on the team, she didn't want to miss the chance to learn. The match began, and the boys played well at first, but soon the other team started taking control. Their players were stronger and more experienced. Mira could see the tension on her team's faces. Then halfway through the second innings, one of the main batsmen from her team tripped and twisted his ankle badly. The coach rushed over, and soon it was clear he couldn't continue. The team was now short of one player. The coach looked around helplessly. That's when his eyes met Mira's. She hadn't moved. She just sat there quietly, clutching her bat. There was a long pause. "Can you play?" the coach asked finally. The boys stared in disbelief. Mira stood up slowly, her heart pounding. "Yes, sir," she said softly. The crowd began to whisper. Some people laughed. "He's really putting a girl in the team," someone said from behind the fence. But the coach ignored them and handed her a helmet. "Go on," he said firmly. "Do your best." Mira walked toward the pitch, feeling 1,000 eyes on her. Her hands trembled slightly as she tightened her grip on the bat. The opposing bowler smirked as she took her position. The first ball came fast and low. She missed it by an inch. The fielders snickered. The second ball came even faster, and she barely managed to block it. Her team's supporters looked uneasy. The third ball came, and this time she was ready. Her body moved naturally. The bat met the ball with a sharp crack, and it flew straight across the field, bouncing past the boundary. For a moment, the whole ground fell silent. Then cheers erupted from her side of the field. Even the coach's face broke into a smile. Mira didn't show any emotion. She just took her position again, calm and focused. The next few overs, she played with precision and patience, turning risky deliveries into smart singles and boundaries. By the end of the match, she had scored more runs than any of the boys. When the game ended, her team had lost by a small margin, but nobody cared. Everyone was talking about the girl who had played better than anyone expected. Reporters from a small local newspaper approached her for a short interview. She felt nervous and didn't know what to say. When they asked how she felt about being the only girl in the team, she simply said, "I just love the game. That's all." After that day, everything began to change, slowly but surely. People who used to laugh at her now greeted her on the street. The boys who once ignored her started asking her for tips. Even the coach seemed more open to having her in the team. For the first time, she felt like she belonged. But with that small bit of recognition came new challenges. A few parents from the team started complaining. "Why is a girl playing with the boys?" they asked the coach. "It's not right." Some of the players' mothers even went to the school principal, saying it set a bad example. Mira didn't know about it at first, but when she overheard two boys talking about the complaints, she felt her heart sink. That night at home, she didn't eat much. Her mother noticed. "What's wrong?" she asked. Mira shook her head. "Nothing," she said softly. Her father could tell something was bothering her. He came to her room later and sat beside her. "What happened?" he asked. She told him everything. He sighed and said, "People are scared of change, Mira. You're doing something they've never seen before. They'll talk, they'll doubt, but that's how progress begins. Just keep playing." The next morning, the coach called her to his office. "I'm getting pressure from some parents," he admitted. "They don't like that you're playing with the boys. They think it's inappropriate." Mira stayed silent. She didn't know what to say. Then the coach leaned forward. "But I don't agree with them," he said. "You earned your place, and as long as I'm coach, you'll play." Mira felt tears prick her eyes but held them back. "Thank you, sir," she said quietly. After that, she practiced even harder. Every afternoon, she stayed longer than everyone else working on her technique. She knew she couldn't afford to make mistakes now. Each ball she hit had to prove that she belonged there. The boys started respecting her more, especially after seeing her dedication. One of them even said, "You practice more than all of us combined." Mira just smiled. "I have more to prove," she replied. Weeks passed and another tournament was announced, a bigger one where scouts from the regional academy were expected to attend. The coach gathered the team and said, "This is our chance to make a name for our school. We'll need everyone at their best." He looked at Mira for a second before adding, "That includes you." The pressure was higher than ever. Mira's hands often trembled before practice, but once she stepped onto the field, all her fear disappeared. The bat, the ball, the sound of leather meeting wood, that was her world. One evening, after a long session, the coach stopped her and said, "You've got talent, Mira, real talent. But you'll need more discipline if you want to go far." She nodded seriously. "I'll do whatever it takes." On the night before the tournament, her father came to her room holding an old faded box. Inside was a pair of gloves, his old ones from when he used to play. "These brought me luck once," he said. "Maybe they'll do the same for you." Mira smiled and hugged him tightly. "I'll make you proud," she whispered. The next morning, when she walked onto the field wearing her father's gloves, she felt ready for anything. The air was filled with energy and noise. Teams from different schools were warming up. Banners fluttered in the wind, and the smell of grass mixed with the sound of drums and cheers. It wasn't just a game anymore. It was her chance to prove she truly belonged. As she stepped forward to bat, she glanced toward the boundary where her father stood, watching with pride. The bowler took his run up, the crowd fell silent, and Mira gripped her bat tighter. Whatever happened next, she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't there to fit in. She was there to stand out. The day of the big tournament began before the sun had even risen. The town's air was filled with excitement, and Mira could feel it in her bones. She woke up early, her heart pounding with nervous energy. Her father was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea. He looked at her and smiled. "Big day," he said softly. Mira nodded, too nervous to speak. He handed her a small cloth bag with his old gloves inside. "For good luck," he said. She smiled and held it close. When she reached the ground, teams from nearby schools were already warming up. The smell of cut grass, the echo of cricket balls hitting bats, and the cheering of students created a buzz in the air. Mira stood quietly near the edge of the field, taking it all in. The boys from her team greeted her politely now. Things had changed. They had seen her play, and they knew she deserved her place. The first match was against one of the toughest teams in the region. Their players were well-trained, wearing matching kits and carrying expensive gear. Mira's team looked simpler in comparison, but she didn't care about appearances. She cared about playing right. When her turn to bat came, she walked to the crease with steady steps, though her hands were slightly trembling. The first few balls came fast. The opposing bowler was quick and confident. She missed the first one narrowly. The second she blocked. Then on the third ball she swung just right. The ball flew cleanly past mid-on, straight to the boundary. The sound of it hitting the ground was like music to her ears. The crowd erupted in cheers, and Mira felt a rush of warmth spread through her chest. That moment reminded her of why she loved the game so much. Her innings went on for a long time. She wasn't just hitting boundaries. She was playing smart, rotating strikes, reading the bowler's every move. By the end, she had scored more than anyone expected. The coach smiled proudly as she walked back to the pavilion. "Well played," he said simply. Mira just nodded, her face glowing with quiet joy. Her team won the first match and then another. Word started spreading around the field about the girl who was outplaying everyone. Reporters from local newspapers began taking notes, and people from other schools came just to watch her bat. She could hear the whispers. Some said it was luck, others said it was skill. Mira didn't care what they called it. She just kept her head down and played. But not everyone was happy with her growing fame. Some parents and players from rival teams started complaining that she was getting too much attention. "It's unfair," one of them said loudly enough for her to hear. "The crowd only cheers because she's a girl." Those words hurt, but she didn't let it show. Her father's voice echoed in her mind. "Let them talk. One day they'll cheer because you earned it." The second day of the tournament was harder. Mira's team had to face the reigning champions, a team known for its aggressive bowling and strict discipline. During warm-up, she noticed the other team watching her closely. Their captain smirked as she practiced her swings. "Let's see how long she lasts," he whispered to his teammate. When the match began, the pressure was intense. The bowler was fierce, throwing fast deliveries that curved sharply. Mira missed one and got hit on the pad. The umpire's call was not out, but the other team started appealing loudly just to shake her confidence. She could feel the pressure building, the crowd murmuring, the tension thick in the air. Her coach shouted from the sidelines, "Stay focused, Mira. Just play your game." She took a deep breath and steadied herself. The next ball came faster than ever. Mira moved her feet perfectly and swung. The ball flew high and long, straight over the fielder's head. The crowd erupted in a mix of shock and excitement. The bowler stared in disbelief. Mira's confidence returned. She began playing with calm control again, slowly turning the game in her team's favor. But near the end, when they needed just a few more runs to win, the sky darkened suddenly. Heavy clouds gathered and a light drizzle began. The pitch became slippery and the game was temporarily stopped. The players gathered under a tent, waiting for the rain to ease. Mira sat quietly, staring at the wet field. Her father, standing at a distance under an umbrella, caught her eye and raised his hand with a thumbs up. That small gesture reminded her that she wasn't alone. After half an hour, the rain stopped and the match resumed. Mira went back onto the field, her shoes soaked but her spirit dry and firm. The bowler tried one last trick, a slower ball meant to confuse her. Mira spotted it instantly. She waited an extra second, then struck cleanly. The ball sped across the field straight to the boundary rope. The crowd roared as her team ran in celebration. They had done it. They had beaten the champions. That evening, as the sun set behind the stands, the announcer called Mira's name as the player of the match. The audience clapped and cheered. Some of the boys from the other team even came forward to shake her hand. It was a moment she would never forget. When she looked into the stands, her father was clapping too, his eyes glistening with pride. Back home, her mother greeted her with a warm smile. "You made the news," she said, holding up the local paper. There was a photo of Mira mid-swing, her hair flying in the wind. The headline read, "She played like a champion." For the first time, even her mother seemed proud. "You proved me wrong," she said softly and hugged her. Mira smiled through happy tears. The next few weeks brought more recognition. A regional sports committee invited Mira to join a training camp for young talents. It was a rare opportunity. The coach announced it to the team during practice. "They've picked only a handful of players from all districts," he said. "And Mira is one of them." The boys clapped and a few even patted her on the back. She thanked the coach quietly. Inside, she was overwhelmed. All the lonely evenings, all the laughter she endured, all the rejections, they were finally leading somewhere. But with opportunity came fear. The training camp was in a big city, far from home. She had never been away from her family before. Her mother was worried. "It's a big step," she said one night while they were having dinner. "Are you sure you're ready?" Mira looked up and said, "If I don't try now, I'll always wonder what could have been." Her father nodded proudly. "That's my girl," he said. The day she left for the city, the whole neighborhood came to see her off. Even the old watchman from the playground brought her a small gift, a tiny metal whistle. "For luck," he said with a grin. Mira laughed and promised she'd visit again. As the bus pulled away, she looked out the window at her father waving. Her heart ached, but she knew she was stepping into a new chapter of her life. The city was loud, fast, and full of strangers. The training camp was even tougher than she expected. Coaches shouted instructions, players competed fiercely, and every mistake was noticed. Mira felt small again, like she was starting all over. The other players were strong, experienced, and confident. Some came from big academies with professional training. When they learned she came from a small town, they looked surprised. "You're the girl from that newspaper, right?" one boy asked. She nodded shyly. He smirked. "Let's see if you can handle real competition." That night, lying in the dorm bed, Mira felt a mix of excitement and fear. She missed her father's voice, the quiet of her small town, and the familiar ground where she practiced. But she also knew she couldn't stop now. She whispered to herself, "You've come this far. Don't give up now." The next morning, as the whistle blew and the players lined up for drills, Mira tightened her gloves and took a deep breath. She didn't know what the future would bring, but she knew one thing for certain. She wasn't just there to participate. She was there to prove she could stand shoulder to shoulder with the best. The morning at the city training camp began early, long before sunrise. Mira woke up to the sound of whistles and shouts echoing across the ground. The players were already warming up and the air buzzed with energy. She rubbed her eyes, tied her hair back, and stepped outside. The ground looked huge compared to the one back home. Everything here was faster, sharper, more serious. She realized this was no small-town tournament. This was where real players were made. The first few days were difficult. The drills were intense, and the coaches didn't show any sympathy. Every mistake was pointed out loudly, and every weakness was exposed. Mira struggled to keep up at first. Her body ached from the long hours, and her hands were covered in blisters. But she didn't complain. She reminded herself why she was there. Each night she whispered the same words before sleeping. "You can't give up now." During the first week, Mira noticed that many players didn't take her seriously. Some whispered that she had only been selected because she was a girl. One even said loudly during a break, "She's just here for attention." Mira heard it but didn't react. Instead, she focused on her training. When others rested, she practiced alone. When others joked around, she stayed silent, studying every move of the senior players. One afternoon, the head coach, a strict man known for his sharp eyes and few words, gathered everyone together. "We will have a selection match next week," he announced. "Only the top players will move forward to the regional level." The players looked at each other nervously. Mira's heart pounded. This was her chance to prove she belonged. That evening, she stayed back after practice, working on her shots under the setting sun. Her clothes were soaked with sweat and her arms felt heavy, but she didn't stop. As she was about to pack up, she noticed someone watching from a distance. It was the assistant coach. He walked over slowly and said, "You work hard?" Mira nodded shyly. He continued, "Talent is good, but effort like yours is what makes champions. Keep going." Those few words filled her with new strength. Days passed quickly as the selection match drew closer. Mira gave everything she had. She woke up earlier than the others, ran extra laps, and stayed after everyone left. Her focus became sharper with each passing day. Slowly, even some of the other players began to notice her determination. A few who once mocked her started asking for practice tips. Mira didn't hold grudges. She helped them when they asked. She believed that the game was bigger than pride. Finally, the day of the selection match arrived. The stands were filled with coaches and scouts. Mira could feel her heartbeat in her ears as she stood on the field. Her team was up against some of the best players in the camp. The first few overs were intense. The bowlers were fast and the pitch was tricky. But Mira kept her calm. She had learned to watch carefully, to wait for the right moment. When her turn came to bat, the bowler gave her a look that said he didn't believe she could last long. The first ball came flying toward her, full of pace and bounce. She stepped forward and hit it straight back past the bowler. The sound of the bat echoed through the ground. A few people in the stands started clapping. The next ball came and she drove it to the boundary. Her confidence grew with every hit. Soon she was in full rhythm, playing shots that surprised even the coaches. By the end of the match, Mira had scored one of the highest totals of the day. When the whistle blew, she walked off the field to applause. The head coach looked at her with an approving nod. "Well done," he said, his voice calm but respectful. It was the first time he had spoken to her directly. That evening, the list of selected players was pinned to the board. Mira's hands shook slightly as she looked for her name. When she found it, her eyes filled with tears. She had done it. She was one of the few chosen for the regional team. The players around her congratulated her, and even those who doubted her came forward to shake her hand. She called her father that night from the dorm phone. "Baba, I got selected," she said, trying not to cry. There was a long pause. Then his warm voice came through, full of pride. "I knew you would," he said. "I'm proud of you, Mira. Your hard work is paying off." She smiled and said, "I just wish you were here." Her father chuckled softly. "I'm always with you, no matter where you play." The next few weeks were filled with intense training and new lessons. Mira's schedule was packed from dawn till dusk. The regional coaches were even tougher, demanding perfection. They pushed her limits every day, testing her patience and focus. But instead of breaking down, Mira grew stronger. She learned to adapt quickly, to think under pressure, to turn every mistake into experience. Her teammates began to see her differently now. She was no longer just the girl from a small town. She was a strong player who had earned her place. Some even started calling her the calm hitter, because of the way she stayed composed during tough moments. Her quiet confidence began to inspire others. One day, during a break, the head coach approached her again. "You've come a long way," he said. "But remember, this is just the start. The real challenge begins when you face players who've been doing this their whole lives." Mira nodded seriously. "I'll be ready," she said. The coach smiled slightly and replied, "I believe you will." Soon, the regional tournament began. This time, the competition was fierce. The matches were played in a big stadium with thousands of people watching. Cameras flashed, reporters stood by, and the noise was overwhelming. Mira had never seen anything like it. Her hands trembled as she stood at the boundary waiting for her turn. When she finally walked onto the pitch, the crowd grew quiet. The first few deliveries were tough, but she kept her focus. Each run she scored boosted her confidence. The sun was blazing, sweat trickled down her neck, but she didn't notice. She was lost in the game. Every sound, every movement seemed distant. It was just her, the bat, and the ball. As the innings went on, she began playing with even more control. Her timing was perfect, her shots clean and graceful. The crowd started cheering louder with each boundary. Even the commentators were impressed. "What a remarkable player," one said. "She plays with the maturity of someone far more experienced." By the end of the match, Mira had once again been the top scorer. Her team didn't win that day, but everyone was talking about her performance. The next morning, her name appeared in the local newspapers and on sports blogs. Headlines read, "Young Girl Shines at Regional Cricket Tournament." Mira couldn't believe it. Her dream was slowly becoming real. That evening, she received a message that left her speechless. It was from the National Youth Selection Committee. They wanted her to attend an advanced training camp the following month. It was the highest level she had ever reached. Her hands trembled as she read the message again and again. When she called home to share the news, her father's voice cracked with emotion. "You're making history, Mira," he said. "You've done what no one here has done before." Her mother, who once doubted her, joined the call and said, "I was wrong. You were meant for this." That night, as she lay in bed, Mira thought about the journey she had taken. From hitting balls under a flickering streetlight to standing under stadium floodlights, it felt unreal. But deep down, she knew this was just another step. There would be new challenges ahead, new people to prove herself to, and new battles to fight. But she wasn't afraid anymore. Before sleeping, she whispered to herself, "You belong here." And for the first time, she truly believed it. Mira arrived at the advanced training camp with a mixture of excitement and nerves. The city looked bigger and brighter than before, with towering buildings and busy streets. But she didn't have time to take it all in. The training camp was intense from the very first day. The coaches expected perfection, and every drill was faster and more demanding than anything she had faced before. Her dorm room was small but comfortable. She unpacked her few belongings and looked at her bat and gloves, placing them carefully on the desk. She remembered her father's words from long ago. "Let them laugh now. One day they'll make them clap," she smiled to herself. This was her chance to make them clap. Training was relentless. Each day began before sunrise and ended after sunset. Mira's muscles ached and sometimes her fingers were raw from gripping the bat, but she didn't stop. The other players were skilled and experienced. Some had been trained since they were children. At first, Mira felt like she didn't belong. But she reminded herself that she had worked hard to reach this level. She had overcome doubt, ridicule, and fear. She could do this. The senior coaches were strict and direct. They corrected every flaw in technique and demanded focus at all times. One morning, after a particularly difficult session, Mira sat under a tree, exhausted and frustrated. She wondered if she could really keep up. Just then, the assistant coach from the earlier regional camp approached her. "You've got the heart," he said. "Your talent is real. Don't doubt yourself now." His words gave her strength, and she stood taller, determined to keep going. Within the first week, the camp held a series of internal matches to evaluate the players. Mira's heart raced as she stepped onto the field. The stadium was filled with scouts, coaches, and even a few journalists. The first few deliveries were challenging, but Mira quickly found her rhythm. She played each ball carefully, combining skill with strategy. Her focus was unshakable. During one over, she noticed that one of the opponents was trying to intimidate her, making gestures and shouting mockingly. Mira ignored it. She remembered all the times people had doubted her back home, all the times she had been told she couldn't. This was just another challenge, another opportunity to prove herself. When she hit a perfect cover drive that sent the ball racing to the boundary, the silence of the stadium turned into applause. Even the senior coach's eyes showed surprise and approval. Mira continued to excel in the matches. She wasn't the flashiest player, but her consistency and intelligence on the field made her stand out. Each time she scored runs or made a strategic play, she felt a quiet satisfaction. She wasn't playing to impress anyone. She was playing to honor the years of hard work, the long evenings of practice in her small town, and the faith her father had in her. One evening, after a long day of drills, Mira sat on the balcony of the dormitory, looking out over the city lights. She called her father. "Baba, it's tougher here than I imagined, but I feel like I'm learning so much," she said. His voice came through the line, calm and encouraging. "I know it's hard, Mira, but you've always faced hard things. You're stronger than you think." She smiled and said, "I'll keep trying, Baba. I won't let anyone down." The days passed and the internal evaluations continued. Mira faced stronger bowlers, faster deliveries, and more tactical field setups. Each time she overcame a challenge, she gained confidence. She began noticing small improvements in herself. Better footwork, sharper reflexes, and a deeper understanding of the game's strategy. The other players began to respect her more, some even seeking her advice. Mira never let it get to her head. She remained humble and focused. Finally, the camp held a major assessment match which would determine who got selected for the national youth team. The stadium was filled with people and cameras recorded every moment. Mira's team faced a strong opponent and the pressure was enormous. She felt the weight of expectations, the eyes of scouts, coaches, and her own peers. But she remembered the empty streets back home, the hours she spent practicing alone, and the words of the old watchman who had always encouraged her. She took a deep breath and stepped onto the pitch. The first few overs were tense. The opposing bowlers tried everything to unsettle her. Mira faced fast deliveries, tricky spins, and even attempts to distract her with loud cheers and gestures. She stayed calm, focusing only on the ball. When the right moment came, she swung and sent the ball racing to the boundary. The crowd erupted and Mira felt a surge of pride. She wasn't just playing. She was commanding the game. Throughout the match, Mira played with intelligence and patience. She rotated strikes, built partnerships, and took calculated risks. Each run she scored was a step closer to proving her worth. By the end of the game, Mira had not only scored the most runs but also guided her team to a narrow victory. The coaches were impressed, the scouts took notes, and even the other players nodded in respect. After the match, the head coach called Mira aside. "You've shown exceptional skill and maturity," he said. "Your selection for the national youth team is confirmed. You've earned this through talent and relentless effort." Mira's heart leapt. She could barely speak. "Thank you, sir," she whispered. His nod was all the acknowledgement she needed. That evening, as Mira packed her things, she felt a mix of excitement and nerves. She would soon be traveling to represent her country. It was a dream she had barely allowed herself to imagine. She thought about her father, her small town, the empty playgrounds, and the early mornings of practice. Every moment had led her here. Tears filled her eyes, but they were tears of joy and accomplishment. Before leaving, she went for a walk in the quiet campgrounds. She saw other players celebrating their selections, but Mira was quiet, reflecting on her journey. She remembered the times she had been told she couldn't, the times she had been laughed at, and the nights she spent practicing alone. All of it had been worth it. She whispered to herself, "I made it, Baba. I really made it." When she called her father that night, he was full of pride. "Mira, you're showing the world what hard work and determination can achieve," he said. Mira smiled through her tears. "I'll make you proud, Baba. I promise I'll keep working no matter what." The next morning, Mira boarded the bus that would take her to the National Training Center. As she looked out at the passing city, she felt a mix of anticipation and responsibility. She was about to step into a larger world, where expectations were higher and the challenges greater. But she knew she had the strength, the skill, and the determination to face anything. And deep inside, Mira knew one simple truth. It didn't matter if people doubted her. She had already proven to herself that she could rise above every obstacle. The journey was far from over, but she was ready to embrace it fully. One run, one game, and one victory at a time. Mira arrived at the National Training Center with a mix of excitement and nervousness. The campus was enormous, filled with large practice grounds, modern gyms, and accommodation blocks. She took a deep breath as she stepped off the bus, feeling the weight of the opportunity before her. This was the highest level she had ever reached, and the stakes were greater than anything she had faced. Her first day began with introductions and orientation. Coaches, trainers, and fellow players came from all over the country. Mira felt a little out of place at first, noticing that many had more experience, advanced equipment, and polished techniques. But she reminded herself of everything she had accomplished so far. She had beaten doubts, critics, and fears before. She could do it again. Training was grueling. The schedule was packed from dawn to dusk with early morning running, strength training, fielding drills, batting practice, and match simulations. Mira's muscles ached constantly and her hands bore fresh blisters. She pushed through the pain, recalling the nights she had spent practicing alone back in her town. Every drop of sweat and every ache reminded her that she was capable of enduring far more than she had imagined. The first few matches at the center were intense. Mira faced bowlers with speed and accuracy that she had never experienced. The field setups were strategic and every move had to be calculated. At first, she struggled, missing balls she thought she could hit and misjudging deliveries. But she refused to give up. She studied each bowler's movements carefully, adjusted her stance, and focused on timing rather than force. Slowly, she began to improve. Her persistence caught the attention of the head coach. One evening, after a long practice session, he approached her. "You have talent," he said, "but what sets you apart is your determination. Keep learning, stay humble, and you'll go far." Mira nodded, feeling proud but also aware that there was still a long road ahead. Outside of the training sessions, Mira struggled with homesickness. She missed her family, the quiet streets of her town, and the familiar sounds of her playground. Some nights she lay awake in her bed, staring at the ceiling, wishing she could hear her father's voice or see her mother's smile. But she used that longing as motivation. She imagined them watching her, cheering her on silently, and it strengthened her resolve. The weeks went by quickly, and Mira began to shine during internal matches. She wasn't the fastest or the strongest player, but she was strategic, composed, and remarkably consistent. Her batting technique improved, her footwork became sharper, and her reflexes quicker. Coaches began noticing her ability to read the game, make smart decisions under pressure, and remain calm even in tense situations. One day, during a particularly challenging practice match, the team faced a top player known for his aggressive bowling. The other players seemed intimidated, but Mira remained focused. The first few balls were tricky, and she barely managed to defend herself. On the fourth ball, she adjusted her timing and executed a perfect shot that sent the ball to the boundary. The crowd of coaches and fellow players erupted in applause. Mira's confidence soared, and she played the rest of the match with skill and intelligence, scoring more runs than anyone else. Her performance earned her recognition from the senior coaches, and soon she was selected to represent the national youth team in an international tournament. Mira could hardly believe it. She thought back to her small town, the empty playgrounds, and the countless hours she had practiced alone. Every struggle, every tear, every moment of doubt had led her here. Before leaving for the international tournament, Mira's father came to visit. He stood at the training center gates holding a small box. "Open it," he said. Inside were her old gloves and a photo of her first cricket bat. Mira smiled, tears welling up in her eyes. "I've watched you grow from a small girl with a dream to a young woman ready to face the world," her father said. "No matter where you go, remember that your heart brought you this far." Mira hugged him tightly, feeling the weight of his pride and love. At the international tournament, Mira faced new challenges. Players from other countries were fast, skilled, and disciplined. The crowd was massive, the pressure immense. But Mira had learned to focus, to trust her skills, and to play with her heart. Each time she stepped onto the field, she reminded herself of every lesson she had learned, every practice session, and every moment of determination that had led her here. Her batting was remarkable. She scored runs with precision and calmness even when facing fast bowlers or tricky spins. Her teammates began relying on her for guidance, seeking advice on strategy and field placements. Mira's quiet confidence inspired everyone around her. During one critical match, Mira's team faced elimination. The pressure was intense and the opposing team had a strong lead. Mira was the last batter left, and she knew the game's outcome depended on her performance. She took a deep breath, adjusted her stance, and focused entirely on the ball. The first few deliveries were fast and tricky, but she remained calm. With every shot, she gained momentum, and soon she began scoring consistently, bringing her team closer to victory. By the final over, Mira had turned the game around. Her team needed just a few runs to win. The bowler threw a fast delivery, and Mira swung perfectly, sending the ball to the boundary. The crowd erupted in cheers. Her team had won, and Mira's contribution had been pivotal. She felt a rush of joy, pride, and relief all at once. After the tournament, Mira received recognition from coaches, scouts, and the media. She had proven herself not just in her country, but on the international stage. Reporters asked how she felt about her journey. Mira smiled and said, "I just love the game. I worked hard, stayed focused, and trusted myself. That's all." When she returned home, the entire town welcomed her as a hero. People who once doubted her now celebrated her achievements. Children looked up to her, inspired by her journey from a small playground to the international cricket stage. Mira's father and mother hugged her tightly, proud beyond words. Mira knew that her journey was far from over. There would be more challenges, tougher matches, and higher expectations. But she had learned the most important lesson. Determination, hard work, and belief in oneself could overcome any obstacle. She had faced doubt, ridicule, fear, and homesickness, and she had triumphed. As Mira stood on her small town's playground, now filled with young girls and boys practicing cricket. She smiled. The empty swings and dusty ground had transformed into a place of dreams and possibility. She realized that the journey was not just about winning games, but about inspiring others to believe in themselves. Mira picked up her bat, took a deep breath, and whispered to herself, "This is just the beginning." With every step forward, Mira continued to grow, not just as a player, but as a person. Her story became a symbol of courage, resilience, and hope for anyone who had ever been told they couldn't. Mira had shown that with heart, hard work, and unwavering belief, even the most impossible dreams could come true. And so she kept playing, one match, one challenge, one victory at a time, inspiring countless others to follow their own dreams with the same dedication and courage.